Okay, so there's this digital asset company, and they just dropped an earnings report that is, well, it's so huge it's making everyone question everything. I'm talking about BitMine Immersion, BMIR for short. They posted a profit that honestly seems to have come out of thin air. So, yeah, we got to break this down.
Yeah, this is the number. $328 million and change in net income. Just to put that into perspective for you, that's not just a big number. That puts BMNR up there with some of the absolute titans in this space. It's a jaw-dropping figure. And you just have to ask, how?
And right, that's the big mystery here. Think about it. Most companies, they need to sell stuff. They need products, they need customers, they need sales to actually make a profit. BMNR, they have basically none of that. So, where in the world did all this cash come from? Well, the answer, it points to a whole new way of doing business.
Okay, so first things first. To really get what BMNR is doing, you have to understand what they're not. Because this is not your normal tech company. It's not a bank. They are playing a totally different game here.
That's right. They're not a crypto miner anymore. In fact, they got rid of all their equipment. They're not a software company. And they're definitely not an exchange like Coinbase. They've completely pivoted away from all those old school models. And that's exactly why their financials look so weird and honestly, so incredibly powerful.
So here's the absolute key to the whole thing. BMNR has become what's called an Ethereum Treasury vehicle. The easiest way to think about it is like a super focused investment company. But instead of buying stocks or bonds, their one and only mission, their entire reason for existing, is to buy and hold as much Ethereum as they possibly can, all for their shareholders.
And just look at how fast this all went down. I mean, it's kind of insane. At the start of this year, they were a tiny little mining operation. Then they had a brief little flirtation with Bitcoin, but then, bam, a massive all-in pivot to Ethereum. And today, they're sitting on an $11.8 billion treasury. That makes them the single largest corporate holder of ETH on the planet. Wild.
So the question is, how does just holding an asset make you $328 million in profit? It's all about this concept we can call the Ethereum Treasury flywheel. Think of it like a self-powering engine that just keeps getting stronger.
To really wrap your head around this, it helps to look at MicroStrategy. They literally wrote the playbook for this with Bitcoin, right? Well, BMNR is running that same play, but for Ethereum. But, and this is a huge but, there's one critical difference: yield. See, Bitcoin just kind of sits there in your treasury. Ethereum, you can actually put it to work.
And here's how that flywheel gets spinning. It's actually pretty simple. Step 1, you buy up a ton of ETH. Step 2, you generate yield on it by staking it, which also helps keep the network secure, by the way. Step 3, you take that yield and you use it to buy even more ETH. And the whole point, the end goal, step 4, is to make sure that for every share of stock, the amount of ETH it represents just keeps going up and up. But here's the thing. They're not just doing basic staking like everyone else. No, BMNR is building what's basically a profit multiplier right into their business. It's called the MAVAN network. And that is the secret sauce that makes them so much more than just a company that holds a bunch of ETH.
So MAVAN stands for the Made in America Validator Network. It's set to launch early next year, and it's basically designed to be this super secure, high-end staking service for big money, for institutions. This is what gives them a huge edge. They can get that base yield, sure, but they can also tack on more yield from fancy stuff like restaking, which is basically just a way to earn yield on your yield. It completely transforms their treasury from just a pile of assets into a real, live cash flow machine.
Okay, so this brings us to the company's ultimate mission, their grand plan. And it's not just about earning a bit of yield, it's about a goal so big, so audacious, they actually call it the alchemy of 5%.
And just let this sink in for a second. Their publicly stated mission is to own 5% of the entire global supply of Ethereum. 5%. No company ever has tried to own such a massive chunk of a major global blockchain. This is completely uncharted territory.
And you know what? They're actually making some scary progress. You can see the acceleration right on this chart. They went from owning just 0.5% back in July to almost 3% by November. The speed is just picking up like crazy.
So yeah, as of right now, they're sitting at 2.9%. They are already way more than halfway to this absolutely massive goal. And they did it in just a couple of months. But why? What's the point? What's the strategic endgame here? Why is owning this much of the network so important to their plan? It's not just about bragging rights, believe me. It's all about some pretty fundamental network effects.
Look, by basically cornering a big chunk of the supply, BMNR becomes a sort of center of gravity in the ecosystem. They become a magnet for liquidity, their own actions can start to amplify price movements, and maybe most important of all, they make themselves the easiest, most obvious way for giant institutions to get exposure to Ethereum without buying it directly. They become the proxy.
What BMNR is doing here, it's more than just a strategy for one company. It could be a whole new playbook for how corporations handle their money in this new digital world. And they just made a move that pretty much solidifies that idea.
Get this, they announced a dividend. A dividend! This has literally never been done by a major crypto treasury company. It's a massive signal to Wall Street and the old guard of finance that they are here and they're ready to play by their rules, but with a totally new kind of asset. And look, I know a 1-cent dividend sounds tiny, right? But the signal it sends is absolutely enormous. It tells the world they have positive, predictable cash flow coming in. It opens them up to a whole new world of investors, think pension funds, dividend funds, that couldn't even look at them before. It's a total masterstroke for building institutional credibility.
So, the last piece of this entire puzzle is the leadership. I mean, to pull off a plan this crazy, you need someone with incredible credibility at the helm. And this quote, well, it pretty much sums it all up.
BMNR's strategy is being guided by Tom Lee, just the #1 ranked strategist on Wall Street, founder of Fundstrat. His involvement is like a giant seal of approval from the traditional finance world. It just legitimizes the whole thing. It lowers the perceived risk for the big money players, and it gives them access to the highest levels of finance. He's their key. So when you put it all together, you've got the massive treasury, you've got the yield from the MAVAN network, you've got the compounding growth, and you've got that top-tier institutional credibility, you get this. It's really the simplest way to think about BMNR. It's not just ETH. It's like ETH on steroids.
And that just leaves us with this one final massive question to chew on. What actually happens when a single company manages to own 5% of a global financial network? BMNR is on a path to do something nobody has ever even tried before, and whether they succeed or fail, it's going to have huge implications, not just for their stock, but for the future of corporate finance and for Ethereum itself. And that is a story you're going to want to watch.